the Evolution of Esports as a Sport, Entertainment, and International Pastime panel. And to start things off, I just want to relay a story that probably about 14 years ago in 1997, in probably a room no bigger than this, someone, no one really can track down the exact origins, came up with this word eSports. And little did they know back in 1997 that 14 years later, this word would actually turn into something that would represent, in my opinion, a phenomenon, something that has grown at an exponential rate, something that is getting much more exposure, both globally and domestically. And I'm really excited to be here as the moderator of a panel with four incredibly influential individuals in esports. And what we're going to do today is, after our introductions, we're going to pose a few questions to our panelists. And then we're going to open the floor to you guys for any questions that you might have as well. So again, thank you for joining us. And I'll start off with myself. My name is Marcus Graham. I've been involved with esports since about 1999. I began as a professional player. I went on to become a commentator after realizing that I probably needed to get a job. And that eventually led me to sort of this world of esports, where I'm a host, I'm a passionate talk show content creator, I cast, and to me, esports is pretty much life. And I think that the four individuals up here will kind of say something similar. But let's start with, first off, Dustin Beck, VP of Esports for Riot Games. Dustin, if you could just give us a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Thank you, Marcus. Dustin Beck, VP of Esports, as he mentioned. I oversee the esport operations for Riot Games and for League of Legends, including the operation and oversight of our League Championship Series. It's our professional sport league that is operated in North America and Europe. I work with our emerging countries like Brazil and Turkey on their kind of grassroots esport movements. And then I work with our partner leagues in Korea, in China, and in Southeast Asia to kind of help promote and execute on their esport operations as well.
Thank you. Next to Dustin, we've got Kevin Lin, COO of Twitch.
Thanks, Wheat. Kevin Lin, I'm Chief Operating Officer of Twitch and Justin TV. I've been there for a little over 5 years. And about 3 years ago, a small team internally really got introspective about the business and thought, where do we really want to take this? And when StarCraft 2 Beta came out, we started playing, we hosted a tournament for our startup friends, and we decided, this is something we really want to invest in. And since then, we've really been driving the company in that direction and building a live streaming platform for global distribution and a set of tools that are relevant for very specifically gaming companies and gaming organizations and teams and players to be able to reach that global audience via live video.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up, we've got Jason Ng. He's the commissioner of the Garena Premier League. Jason?
Hi, everyone. So I am the commissioner of the Garena Premier League. I run the league for League of Legends in Southeast Asia, which Dustin mentioned just now. So for those of you that don't know, this is like Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and then we have Taiwan and Hong Kong. So this is a pretty big thing. Besides that, I'm also a director at Garena, so we run League of Legends, FIFA Online Free, Path of Exile. So we have quite a number of titles which are esports under our belt as well.
Thank you, Jason. And finally, we've got Jack Etienne, the general manager of Cloud9. Jack?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Etienne. I am the general manager of Cloud9, which is a League of Legends professional team here in North America. Formerly, I was the general manager of TSM for 2 years prior to that, which is also a League of Legends professional team.
Thank you. So we're going to kick off the questions here. What's unique about this panel is we have someone from distribution, media. We have someone from a league that's running a self-contained, or a publisher that's running a self-contained league. We've got an individual tournament organizer, and then we've also got team managers. So we're able to hit all of the different aspects that sort of encompass the ecosystem that is esports. And what's interesting about this 14 years of growth that esports has seen is that 60%, again, I'm throwing this number out, I'm kind of 60%, I'd say, of this growth has happened in the last 3 years. And it's quite amazing that it's happened so quickly. So the first question I want to give to the panelists, especially from your respective area of expertise, is that how has esports evolved for you in the past 12 months? Dustin, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So, looking back on this past year, I think the big kind of turning point for me is that the professional careers of these athletes all over the globe has been elevated in the sense that they can now dedicate their career and their profession to playing games. I think kind of prior to this year, there was intermittent or sporadic tournaments where teams would kind of gear up for a month practicing for it, and win or lose, like they may make some money at the tournament, they actually might lose money if they don't place well and not make prize money. But it was really hard to have a sustained lifestyle of being an esport professional. And what the LCS has done, what StarCraft has done with WCS, like there are now leagues in place that have kind of a season-long tournament where they're being supported by sponsors or by streaming revenue or other things where they don't need a second job to kind of support their lifestyle, support their families. They get to dedicate their careers to esports, and I think that's been a big turning point. There's consistency. There's appointment-based viewing where as a fan, I get to tune in on specific days because I know exactly when these broadcasts are. I get to follow teams and players that now I've started to enjoy their play style or their personalities that have come to life. And so this structure that didn't really exist until this past year, I think has been the biggest turning point in my mind for esports.
Okay, Kevin, let's move on to you, where we see TV sort of falling further and further behind as it comes to gaming, and especially for Twitch. How has esports evolved in the last 12 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, piggybacking a little bit on Dustin, for us, what we set out to do was really build a great baseline of income for a lot of these guys. I mean, we see esports as a significant portion of the content. It's a very vocal community. We take a lot of feedback from those guys, and far and away, the biggest thing they really wanted was to be able to support themselves without having to work, one or two other jobs and then go home and practice. They wanted to be able to practice constantly. So that type of feedback really guided the way we thought about the product, and we continue to think about the product the same way, regardless of whether you're a pro player or more of a casual personality streamer. We want to build the tools that allow you to do that. In general, I mean, the way esports has evolved, that's been largely influential for us is, just the sheer massive growth. I mean, the fact that you see events like LCS with millions and millions of viewers, for us, it's a problem we have to solve, right? There's not really one great solution for global distribution, in my opinion, outside of what we've been able to do. And we've only been able to do it because we see that sustained growth. We see the sustained support from the developers directly into the teams and the players and the rest of the ecosystem. And without that, you couldn't see the growth. But the fact that it's all kind of coming together is really what, in my opinion, is driving the growth, and it drives the way we think about product.
Jason, many of us probably are very aware of the growth that we've seen here in North America, but maybe you can shed some light on how the growth has been for the last 12 months in your region.
So from a Southeast Asian perspective, I'd like to just share a few things that a lot of people may take for granted here that has helped fuel the growth of esports here. One very basic one is in order to enjoy esports, you need to be able to watch esports. So imagine the worst hotel internet you've ever had, and imagine something worse than that. And that's what internet is like in many parts of Southeast Asia, where people can't even watch a stream at 360p, right? And then that's not HD. You can't even watch it because it doesn't work. So there's a lot of infrastructure that still needs to be put in place within Southeast Asia for esports to then grow and to become a viable medium for which we can then use to support the lives of these professional gamers. Because if they don't get viewership, then there's nothing for sponsors to come in and say, hey, this is something that we should get involved in. And it's a real problem, so much so that in Vietnam, what Garena does is that we've had to build up our own video service because international bandwidth isn't that great leading into Vietnam. So it's something that we are also tackling in Indonesia and in Philippines as well, where we've basically run out of internet to even play League of Legends, not even talk about streaming. So whatever's happening in the Western markets is a step behind in Southeast Asia and Taiwan. We're learning from Dustin and his team and everyone else around the world in terms of what we can bring to Southeast Asia. But the reality is that we have a bit more to go in terms of educating the regular companies that there's some value here in getting all the pieces in place in terms of having the structure to coach people and also just having the facilities to then just run esports as the thing, because we can't get it on traditional TV.
Thank you. And finally, Jack, certainly you've had your experience with some high-level teams, and you've probably seen a lot of evolution in the team aspect of esports in the last 12 months. So what have you seen?
Yeah, the structure that Riot and Twitch have brought to esports have dramatically changed the way that I'm able to work with my team and our sponsors. The constant visibility of my players, even if there's a major tournament going on. You see teams like TSM this week are getting 100,000 concurrent viewers on Twitch, just watching these guys practice and play. So when you have that type of visibility, when I go talk to sponsors, it really blows them out of the water that there's that type of traction in esports. And so the type of conversations I have now will go from educational to, for me, selecting which sponsor really fits my team best. So it's really been an amazing evolution, and in big part to the structure that Riot and Twitch put together for us.
And just a quick follow-up to that, I mean, let's put it into a frame of reference. Even 3 years ago, for a team, it was a much more difficult task to get a sponsor.
Yeah, generally every conversation I would have, but even a year and a half ago, was I had to explain what League of Legends was. They weren't even aware that it was a thing. And when I told them the type of visibility that these players actually got, they didn't really believe it. I would have to take them to the Facebook pages, the Twitter pages, and show them, the following of these events, and show them pictures before it really sunk in. But I don't have those conversations like that anymore. Things have really changed.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit. You're going to hear this a lot when we talk about esports, and that's the concept of the ecosystem, because every single aspect of the ecosystem, just like in real life, is absolutely essential for the success of the growth and the ongoing continuation of esports. So, Kevin, I actually want to start with you, because I do believe that Twitch has been one of the biggest sort of launch pads for this growth of esports, simply because we took everything off of the airwaves and we turned this into a global sort of distribution platform. So how does Twitch fit into the overall ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, at the core, we're the distribution mechanism for the majority of the esports content, right? So if you're a content producer, whether you're a developer or again a team or a player or a league organizer, you have a one-stop shop to distribute around the world. And I think really we try to make that process as simple as possible. So you look at traditional media. For a traditional media company to try to distribute digitally, you're often working with a company to build your video player. You're negotiating contracts with CDNs. You're negotiating with an ad server. Then you're hiring an ad sales team. We wanted to bring all that in-house and make it really a one simple solution for that. So at the core, we strive to be that so that these guys can focus on creating great games and creating great content. Beyond that, I think regarding teams, sort of the way teams like Jack's teams think, is how do you build an economy for sponsorships? How do you drive value back to sponsorships? And you look at traditional sports, you don't get a lot of access to athletes really outside of appearances, news, endorsements, right? And that's really where sponsors derive their value. So if you see Michael Jordan walking around with Nikes, to them, that's a worthwhile investment. But for esports, given how nascent it is, how do you get that exposure? And I think Twitch has really brought that exposure. So it's all about how many minutes, how much engagement do you have around your team, your player, and then your league, and so on, to justify that sponsorship. And I think that's the current style of exposure that has really convinced a lot of sponsors to kind of buy in. But beyond that, I mean, really, what we want to do is we want to make this a true international pastime. It is a very, very global phenomenon. There's a lot of potential in sort of developing it as a slightly more mainstream thing. I'm not saying we have to go really truly mainstream yet, but the fact that people are watching for 100 minutes to 300 minutes per day. That's as much as your average American watches television per day. I think that's a strong testament that what we're doing is working.
So we've got a way to watch, and we need someone to watch, and that means that we've got players. Without players, we really wouldn't have esports. So Jack, as far as the team ecosystem, or how it fits into the esports ecosystem, how important are these players and the teams and their functionality in esports?
They're hugely important. The personalities behind these players drive the brands of these teams and get the sponsors to get involved. So taking care of the players, whether I was on C9 or with TSM, was like my number one goal, is making sure they were happy with their situation, being paid appropriately, and saw the benefit of making sure that their sponsors were happy. And I think there's been a lot of growth in that in esports, where there wasn't a lot of opportunity. It was like a side job or just fun for them, where now it's a true career, where these guys, if they want to take it on, they really don't have to do anything else. And really make it actually, they could go from being a pro player to becoming a caster to providing information or just streaming on Twitch. You can pick your avenue and actually be very successful.
Great. And let's move to Jason. Jason, then you've got the tournament organizer side of it, and you've got to have a place for these players to go and play in these competitions. So can you talk to me a little bit about how tournament organization, how something like creating a league and a sustainable business works into the ecosystem of esports?
So I'll just first start by saying that if you want to start a league, prepare to spend a lot of money upfront, because it's not cheap. And initially, no one's going to give you any money for it, because as Jack mentioned, when you first start, people don't understand. Companies in Asia, they'll be like, what is League of Legends, right? They don't understand it. And then you tell them, oh, we're going to have people play this game professionally. That doesn't make any sense to them whatsoever. So what we have to do initially is that we have to bankroll the league. Basically, we have to pay for the league. We are even paying for teams initially, because we don't have as advanced an infrastructure there where people want to step in and say, hey, I'm going to own a team and I see value in that. So no one sees value in that, and we have to lead the way. As a company, to show people that this is something that is of value and something that you should be looking into. So specific to the Southeast Asian context, it even gets more complicated because we run the league across multiple countries. So I have the Garena Premier League broadcast in 4 languages every week. So we have to coordinate across all these teams every week and get all these teams there on time. And to make sure that we have content that it makes sense in every region. So it's like running mini worlds every week. It's a lot of work. And this is just at the regional level. We have to then feed into the league. So we only get as good a team as we can get from the local leagues. So we also have our local leagues and an ecosystem there that will then feed into a regional team, a regional league that then feeds into the international stage run by Dustin. And all this takes a lot of work, a lot of coordination. And it's definitely not easy. I would definitely like for more people to try so that I don't have to work so hard. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. So we're going to keep plugging away and trying to up the level of what happens in the league. So you may just think that running a league is easy, but there isn't readily available shoutcasting talent out there. There aren't many people that understand games enough to then run the video production. You need people who then run, just run BT managers like Jack, right? That those people are hard to find. Getting gamers to understand this is a job is not easy as well. Most of them don't have this concept in Asia. So it's something that we have to then tackle on many, many fronts. That's very hard. Coming from our background, we don't have the benefit of a career where they've had StarCraft for 10 years or more. It's much more advanced there. So we're making our way there, and hopefully we'll get there soon.
Great. I saved Dustin for last because in my eyes, Riot brought something new to the table when it came to sort of how they were approaching esports. A publisher in the past traditionally had a very hands-off relationship with the tournament organizers. It was typically a situation where if something wasn't quite working in the game, it became very difficult for a tournament to sort of get that fixed because there might have been different initiatives or it might not have been the path of the publisher. Well, Riot decides, we can support our league. And so this becomes sort of a new aspect of the ecosystem because it's something fairly new. So Dustin, can you talk to us a little bit about this decision, how you feel like it contributes to the ecosystem, and then maybe how it's helped you guys as a publisher as well?
Yeah, I mean, when we kind of 18 months ago took a look at the landscape for what tournaments were going on and whatnot, you know, we had a decision to kind of partner with existing kind of esport organizers like MLG and IPL and ESL, or kind of go at it and create a league that was run by Riot. And I think we kind of went in a middle path where we continued to partner with these third-party organizations, but we also wanted to create a league that was really kind of, I guess, symbolic too of the quality and the care that we put into our actual game. And so we wanted to start a league that kind of really encapsulated like how we thought a sports kind of ecosystem should run. And so we created the LCS, which is our pro league. But you know, I think the main purpose for that was the game was designed as a sport, right? When the game was being created, the company was founded in 2006. Like it shared all the core fundamentals that any other sport has. It's competitive. No two games are ever the same. There's tons of viable strategies that can win out on any given day. And by creating this league, we thought that, you know, we could really drive a lot of engagement back to our game through our players, and that kind of was a lot of the inspiration behind creating the league. But, you know, outside of the league, a sport is not successful if there's just NFL and football, right? NFL and football is so successful because there's Pee Wee leagues that operate. There's high school football with all different divisions that are successful. There's college football with NCAA. There's D3 football. And so we knew that we needed an ecosystem to exist where there's kind of aspirational paths. If you do want to become a professional League of Legends player, how does that happen? And so what we've done is again create the pro league, but it's not just that. There's a challenger league now that's going to be rolled out in season 4 that we're partnering with Coca-Cola on. That is kind of our NCAA football or our AAA baseball. And then we're working with the MLGs of the world and the ESLs of the world to also have other tournaments that are existing. Because, you know, if I played baseball in high school, I played soccer in high school, and you know those leagues are fun as well. And so we have online tournament activities that go on all over Europe. For example, we partner with ESL on our Go for LOL series, which is weekly tournaments that go on in Germany and in Spain. And there's EPSs, which are country-specific tournaments as well. So there's really a robust kind of grassroots tournament activity that's kind of true to our roots. And then it's kind of supplemented at the highest level with our pro league.
Great. So we're going to take questions in just a moment. We've got a mic up at the front if you'd like to line up, and if you have questions for any of the panelists or all of them, feel free. We'll start taking those as they become available. Now, you guys have given us a great breakdown of sort of the ecosystem and how things exist. Here's a question for you guys, and anyone who wants to grab it, is what's missing? You know, what would you feel like is maybe a fundamental element that we don't have that would help esports growth in general? And this goes out to anyone who is brave enough to.
I mean, I can start with one thing I think that would support the whole ecosystem as a whole, and we've kind of alluded to this earlier, but sponsors, right? It really just helps the ecosystem grow, and a lot of this is work on our end to do to convince them that what's happening is real and it's here to stay, and that it's an engaging thing and it's a hard to reach audience, and you know the typical sales stuff we have to do, but a lot of it too falls on the audience to kind of do that public outcry for, look, we want this to work, we want the support, we will support the people who are buying in and sponsoring it. It's a critical part of the ecosystem. Stepping in a completely other direction, I think overall, show of hands, how many of you guys are game developers or aspiring? Okay, a lot, right? So, good, I mean, it's obviously a game developer conference, but I think the reason why I just wanted you guys almost to see like how many of you guys are in this room listening to what we're talking about and how we look to companies like Riot that have really embraced it, not only from the league perspective, but from the game development side. Thinking in a very deep way, how do I design my game not only to be great to play, but great to spectate? What are the important tools? What are the stats that need to be displayed? How does the open camera work? And even further into the future, think about, does the audience ever influence the gameplay itself? I believe in the future we'll see games where the online audience can actually interact with the players and change the landscape altogether. I think that's a future evolution of games. It's weird to think about now, but I really think we're getting there. And I think as game developers in this room, I implore you guys to really consider that. I mean, even a game as simple as Tilt to Live or Puzzles and Dragons. I mean, you look at Puzzles and Dragons, they're even taking a competitive spin on that game, right? You would have never really thought a puzzle game would be competitive at an international scale, but they're thinking about how do we start to tap into this audience? So keep thinking about that.
Is anyone else? Jack?
I think basically what we were talking about this morning is that there's a lot of new people that are starting to follow like League of Legends or competitive esports, and there isn't a lot of educational material to get these people who are, say watching a game with their son, daughter, or maybe the loved one, to get them up to speed on what the heck is happening in this game. I mean, just my own personal story is that my dad sees me involved in this, and he's trying to watch these games, and like, what's this Baron? Why do you want it? Why are you going after this dragon? I would love to see someone like embrace the whole educational side of this, to make sure there's some videos that can get these people up to speed to figure out what the heck is going on quickly. I think that's going to be very important for us to grow this, to get beyond like the current audience, to bring in other family members and friends to get to the table and interested quickly.
Yeah, education's been less of an issue as esports grown, because a lot of it was from the hardcore audience, the people who played the games that already understood it. But as things have grown so just substantially over the last couple of years, I agree with you. Education is definitely an area that really needs improvement. Does anyone have any other missing ecosystem parts or things that are making it difficult for the growth?
Yeah, I think, and it's kind of related to Jack's point, but, a lot of the comparisons and inspiration that we draw is from traditional sports, and, learnings is a big one, but, there's also no kind of adjacent content, right? There's a ton of content being generated by the league in terms of the games being played, but there's no ESPN.com. There's nowhere that you get to kind of go get a good wrap on what just happened in the world of esports, not just League of Legends related, but any other game. And some companies are starting to do it, but there's not that kind of one-stop shop for everything. I mean, when I go home at night, I watch SportsCenter and I get like my 30-minute fill of everything that just happened in the NHL and NFL and NBA. And there's not really like a high-quality output for that content, either video or written content for people to consume if they want kind of a quick and dirty highlight of what just happened. And so I think there are some kind of missing pieces as it relates to like a SportsCenter type show or a ESPN.com.
So Dustin, if you know Vietnamese, my Vietnamese team has been doing videos on all the pro leagues. You can watch that. You should. We cover the Chinese league, Korean league, LCS, my own GPL. We cover everything. You just need to learn Vietnamese. It's not hard.
Easy.
So I'll just add on to my previous point that I need more internet in Southeast Asia. if anyone here can help me fix that, I'll be very appreciative, so we can all get esports off the ground, let people watch the game. That would be really helpful. So go game developers.
Great. I'm sure we'll get that taken care of ASAP. Again, we've got an open microphone, so I know there's got to be some questions. All right, that's what we like to see, some movement. Well, since we had such an enthusiastic jump, gentleman right here in the red shirt.
And Mark, just agree with you on what Dustin and Riot has done. And 3 weeks ago, the championship series at Staples getting major media. Again, congrats, you guys have taken it to another level. From a marketing, branding, potential sponsor perspective, I think the thing that I would, and frankly the company I work for would like to understand better, is the audience. Not only the size, we see the numbers, but the segments, the geographic, the demographic, things like that. And I would love to know more about them, because that's things we look for. So appreciate if you guys could share any insights on that.
Sure, from kind of a league Legends perspective, and I'm sure Kevin has a more diverse audience with different games, but from our perspective, we see our demographic concentrated in the 18 to 28-year-old segment, and it's about 80 to 85% male for esport viewership, and then about 70% college educated.
How many regionally, how many are in the US, Southeast Asia?
So for our LCS viewership, it's about almost 60% for our North American broadcast. For our European broadcast, it's about, the other is a majority Europe, and then rest of the world's about 10% of that, everywhere from Korea to Latin America. For our European broadcast, it's about 60% Europe, 30% North American, 10% rest of the world. The discrepancy there is the times that our LCS broadcast was during season 3 was not a great time for North America. It started at like 9 a.m. On a weekend, which isn't realistic for a gamer audience. So we're rejiggering what our schedule is going to look like for season 4 so that kind of both LCS viewership times hit the core audience time for that. And then when we get into more international shows, like our All-Star Game or Worlds, it's a pretty even breakout depending on the time zone that we're hitting, and it's split pretty evenly across North America, Europe, China, Korea, and Southeast Asia.
Kevin, do you have any comments from like a
Yeah.
over-encompassing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of the broader audience, it's kind of, what Dustin just said. It's what you guess. It's 18, it's a little bit broader, 18 to 35. Definitely skews male, but it's very international, right? So for across the site for us, it's about 35% North America, 30% Western Europe, about 10% Eastern Europe, 10% East Asia, and then the rest is kind of scattered. And it kind of ebbs and flows, right? It's really cool to watch. You'll see markets like Brazil pop up all of a sudden because of, broadband penetration on a march to get broadband penetration into 90% of the market by 2016. So we can kind of follow these trends as well. But I think in talking about who is this, who are you really reaching? It's the traditionally very hard to reach audience. It's the cord cutters. It's the very tech-savvy folks who don't spend their time watching television. They spend their time playing games. They spend their time watching YouTube and Hulu and Netflix and Twitch. It's hard to get to them. They're incredibly picky. They do a lot of research when they buy products, and I think it's an important to reach audience, and esports is a great way to get to them.
Great. Thank you. Next question.
Sorry, I'm a little short. I've been a part of very non-mainstream competitive activities for a long time, and I feel like education is always a huge problem. Have you guys ever thought about trying to facilitate just education at the educational level, meaning like high schools, creating programs, anything like that?
Anyone want to jump in?
I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'll be quick. So yes, absolutely. We really encourage high school organizations to embrace it. We've done a lot of sponsorship of grassroots organizations for high schools. College, I mean, we did a scholarship program last year, I think because we firmly believe that if you can get a scholarship for bouncing a ball and throwing it through a hoop, you can get a scholarship for playing video games. And so yes, 100% we want to support it. I think we actually look to the community to really tell us, like, what do you need, right? I mean, the good thing about high schools and colleges is you have a lot of basic resources. You have AV resources from the school, you have space. So what is it beyond that we can help with? But we do like to embrace that audience a lot.
To kind of follow up to this question to everyone on the panel, does anyone feel like that's not something that needs to be rushed into? That maybe forcing, college level activities or high school level activities are, that might not gain as much interest as the major competitions isn't necessarily the right path? That it's more of a as things grow and things naturally happen? Or does anyone have other thoughts on that?
I think it's been interesting to see how things have just naturally evolved. I know there's probably a lot of negative perceptions around video games and like the potential health consequences for just playing nonstop. I think anything in excess is probably really bad, but I don't think video games gets its fair shake in terms of a lot of the benefits or positive things that it does bring. It requires a ton of leadership skills to be able to go organize a raid in WoW. You learn a lot of social skills by just participating in a social game like a WoW or a League of Legends or a lot of other video games. So I think a lot of that probably hasn't been promoted as much as it should be, but
Okay. It's just following up on this question because I did find it interesting. I want to shoot this one over to Jack. Jack, if let's say high school and college leagues start to blow up, you consider the average age of some of the players and it's getting younger. I mean, you'd probably want that professional high-grade 17-year-old to play on your top-level professional team rather than representing, Miller North High School or something. What are your thoughts on this?
It's a difficult question to answer because, of course, I want to make sure that people get all the education they should get. But the reality is that the reflexes that you need for these games are at their peak between 17 and 22. So sometimes that if you have the skills to make it as a pro, you may need to put some of your college aspirations on hold. And that's just the reality of it. The players are getting younger and younger, and you really do see the fall off on the reflexes, 23 plus.
And real quickly, Jason, because I'm not familiar, but in your region, do you have something similar like feeder teams, or is most of the activity revolving around the top professional teams?
So as I mentioned just now, what we need is that we need a lot of local leagues and a whole ecosystem. As Dustin mentioned, just like the NFL has a lot of feeder leagues, so we have a lot of feeder leagues in different regions. But the approach we adopt a lot of times depends on what is available and what we can do within the scope of the country. For instance, in Taiwan, we already have a school league that runs, and you represent your school, and you say you can only form a team and represent your school and play in that league. We have that in Singapore, Malaysia as well. But in Vietnam, there's a very negative stigma attached to gaming. There was an outright ban on gaming for a few years because there's this teenager that murdered his grandparent because the grandparent said online gaming bad for you, and he took out his grandparent. So then there was a complete shutdown on new games in Vietnam for a long time, and League of Legends became the first game to be launched in Vietnam after the ban was eased. So it's very hard for us to then penetrate the school in any way in Vietnam right now. So it depends a lot on what the ecosystem will really allow. In Taiwan, after Taipei Assassins won the World Championships, eSports became recognized, or is in the process of being recognized as a regular sport. So people who are really good at game might be able to get exclusion from national service in Taiwan. So that's been a positive for them and a real step forward in terms of recognition. So a lot of times that we are doing what we can to influence policymakers. But the reality is a lot of times you got to work with what you have in the system.
Great. Excellent question.
That's actually a similar thing that happened in South Korea in breakdancing. But thank you for answering this question.
Thank you. Next question.
So, as we can see, most of the esports that have been emerging and doing really well is through PC gaming. But I wonder your guys' thoughts on how you think maybe console gaming and possibly even mobile gaming might do in esports. Will it become as major as PC gaming is?
So the question is about console or mobile gaming, and can it reach the same level that PC gaming has reached? Jason? Yeah?
I'll just take that one. My first thought is a function of access to the device that you're talking about. So unlike here where access to a console is easy, where I come from in Southeast Asia, we don't have consoles in such prevalent numbers. So most of the gaming happens in Vietnam in PC cafes or PC bangs. People don't own their own computers, they can't afford it, so they can't afford their own console for sure. I think certain countries even have outright bans on consoles. China comes to mind. I'm not sure whether they've lifted that, so they don't have access to that device. So I don't think gamers themselves are particular about what platform the game is on. As long as your game is good, they will try their best to play the game, and because they enjoy it. But it's just that a PC is much more accessible to most of the world right now. If you go to the Philippines, most people still have a non-smartphone. If you have a non-smartphone, you can't play many games beyond Snake. So that's kind of hard to make it, a real esport.
If you have some, Kevin? Or?
Yes, I think if I agree that access is very important. If success in the space was simply the degree of access you have to your audience, mobile games should be crushing it, right? But the fact is, and the reason why I implored you guys about thinking about this specific feature in games is they're just not there yet, right? I think mobile gaming companies have a long way to go in terms of thinking about how do you make something interesting to observe. But I think people are certainly thinking about it. I think now that you see the shift of mobile games from truly casual and mostly social to mid-core and hardcore games, bringing traditional PC and console style games to that experience, you'll start to see, you know, that small sliver of that developer population thinking about, okay, it's not enough to make it awesome to play. Let's think about how we get people to watch it. Ditto console, right? I mean, you look at Call of Duty, perfect example, one of the biggest games in the world. Not that much viewership, and why? And I think the reason why is that the observer features just aren't quite there yet. It's hard to understand. It's a deep game because it's a team game, right? Any team game is very strategic, and it's hard to communicate that through the eyes of the player. Like, you really do kind of need a commentator, and unfortunately not every single player can afford to have a commentator commentating all the time, so it's harder to understand, it's harder to get, whereas, you know, you look at a League, you look at a StarCraft, at a quick glance you can see what units are being used, what, you know, the kill-death ratio is, what's going on in the game. You can fundamentally understand it and then start to appreciate the deeper strategies, where I think console games right now have a lot of difficulty communicating that, but I believe with the next gen, a lot of these gaming companies and the consoles themselves are thinking about how do we make this something cool.
I just want to add one more thing. Something that I've actually spoken on quite a few times and I think is a big problem with the console esports is that there's a natural segregation that already exists. You're either a PS3 player or you're a 360 player. So if you're a tournament organizer, you're having to make this decision of like, which box do I use? And then from that point, you're automatically segregating out half of the teams that would show up and play. And I feel like this is an amazing hindrance to console gaming. And when you've got a title like Halo that only shows up on one console, it's easier. But like Kevin mentioned with Call of Duty, millions of players should translate into at least better viewership, and I think the segregation of consoles is one of the big problems they have. But great. Next question.
Hi, I'm Godric. I'm an indie developer and also fighting game enthusiast. And I know from coming from the FGC background, they don't really like the term. I know you guys say what's missing, the eSports term. So I want to get, it's like two questions. What's your opinion on like you know, Evo and a lot of the majors final round of like trying to include like more of the fighting game community in esports, because it's like a clash, I'm sure you're well aware of on both sides of that. And then my second thing is like more of a comment, I guess. I'm a huge sports fan, obviously. What do you think about basketball players actually playing StarCraft, like Gordon Hayward, who was on the StarCraft team? What do you think?
Anyone want to? Dustin?
I think I don't necessarily get why there is a kind of clash between communities. I get that there is, but you know, a ton of our team has been kind of recruited from the video game industry and is on different teams, and we play other games all the time. And I think a big thing with Evo this year is they just stepped up their game big time. The quality, the production of the broadcast, the streaming numbers were huge. I think they set new records for Evo. Like, it was an awesome tournament to watch, and our guys were watching it and taking notes from it. And I think that there's a ton of room for a lot of different titles to be successful in esports. Just like in traditional sports, there's NFL, there's NBA, there's NHL, there's all kinds of sports. And I'm hoping that, you know, kind of Riot's involvement with the LCS and Blizzard's involvement with their WCS is just going to kind of trend towards more and more publishers just getting involved with esports, because it's such an enjoyable way to experience the game outside the game. So I guess that'd be my answer to point one. And then point two, you know, Gordon Hayward's a great example. He plays League of Legends as well, and I've tweeted back and forth.
Utah Jazz player.
Yeah, there, exactly. Yep. You know, he does well. We did a feature on an NFL kicker that also plays League of Legends, and you know, Grant Hill was actually talking with Scara one night at a dinner a couple months ago, and Grant Hill was just like kind of amazed at the level of commitment and dedication that our pro players have with the game, and he's like, that like sounds like my day and what I do with basketball. So so I think there is kind of an aligning of the stars, at least with kind of traditional sports athletes respecting what these esports athletes are doing, because they are really putting it all on the line for the game and the career and their passion, and it kind of embodies everything else of what a traditional sport does with kind of Kobe Bryant, who does the exact same thing just with basketball.
Jack, how long is it before the players on these StarCraft, League of Legends teams that are, as notable and as large and as Gordon Hayward or any other sports superstar?
I think we're actually getting close already. If you take a look at some of the following of some of the top players in League of Legends, they're already eclipsing some Major League Baseball players. If you look at Ocelot, his Facebook page I think has over 300,000 followers at this point. It's pretty common with my teams to see guys in the 190 plus Twitter followers. So we're already getting there, and I think it's only going to continue to grow.
Anyone else have? Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing? I think it's really cool that, there's kind of this new phenomenon where, esport fans are generally more kind of tech savvy and sophisticated than traditional fans, because a traditional sports fan, just given it's a kind of new generation of sport fans. And a cool thing that is kind of risen out of the technology that is kind of built into the game and the streaming platforms is, when a Cloud9 player wants to go stream, like he gets to interact with his fans through Twitch's application, and so he can have tens of thousands of people watching, and like he sees on the chat, they're like, hey, like you should do this, or like he's giving them coaching lessons while he's kind of streaming. And so the interaction now that our pro athletes can have with their fans is kind of like this next generation really cool thing, and I think that's an interesting new element of kind of fan interaction with pro players.
Yeah, I think one quick note on the pro athletes, traditional athletes involvement. Quite simple, but it just has to be authentic, right? Just like with any celebrity. I mean, to be honest, and this is a message to all you pros out there, if you're going to come play in our house, you better bring it, right? You've got to actually play this game, and that's what we want to see, right? It can't be forced, and so far I think it's really evolved organically. On the FGC, I can talk about FGC all day. It is one of the most passionate and old school communities out there. It's a wonderful community. If you haven't been to an EVO, I suggest you guys all go. You won't see so much passion and zealousness in a community as a sort of first experience of esports if you haven't been. It's the same feeling you got at the Staples Center during LCS. It's the same feeling you get when you go to a basketball game. It's really amazing, and I think FGC really carries that through. I think being old school, and having a lot of opinions and seeing it grow around them, there's a lot of controversy, and unfortunately a lot of people pick up on the controversy and not the good parts of it. I think it's all about the community, and I think the community needs to embrace it. The community needs to grow together, and if they really want that to be a big thing, if they want to embrace esports, whether you call it that or not, you've just got to accept it, and ditch the small things for the bigger things.
Jason, any celebrities out in your region playing games?
So again, I'll pull the example of Taipei Assassins. When they won the World Championships, they were featured on the front page of multiple newspapers. They were the evening news. Like we had grandmas and grandpas that knew what TPA was. So it was a thing. The president of Taiwan wrote a letter congratulating TPA for winning. These people were like mobbed everywhere they went, and we had people that knew TPA but didn't know what League of Legends was. So they were as big as Jeremy Lin back in Taiwan, seriously. So when people they would be on motorbikes and someone on a motorbike would high five the guy at the traffic light when they stop, and I was like, wow, is that safe? But it happened, these people really became icons in Taiwan because they won something on an international stage. And it wasn't seen as inferior because they were playing a computer game. They proved themselves to be the best in the world at something, and they were very, very proud and very, very well known.
Great. Next question.
First, I want to say this is such an exciting world that you guys are all talking about. Wish I could start this entire process all over again and come into a world with ESPN of headshots and that'd be great. But sorry, my name's Don Lale. I'm a game designer in the Chicago area. A lot of stuff has been about distribution and audience, and I wanted to talk about the design for a second. It was mentioned that League of Legends was designed specifically as a sport when you guys were talking about it. So how did you come with that definition? What were you focusing on when doing that? How did you come to define that? And then what are the advantages and disadvantages to designing a multiplayer game as a sport as opposed to just traditional game design?
I'll probably butcher this because I'm not a design guy. I'm a finance guy converted to esports. I think they wanted to develop the game as a sport because sport and competition are at the core of what kind of Riot does and what our founders really loved and were passionate about. And as game designers and game influencers, being able to kind of see a game through the entire development cycle with something that you're passionate about is what got them all excited, and what was able to kind of convince some big time designers and developers and artists and the like to come to Riot Games as a relative unknown, as a startup making a new game, a new kind of genre that was MOBA, that was kind of based off of Dota. And so design is a sport, just like I mentioned it, but like the core elements of it is, it keeps it fun, right? Like when you look at baseball's been around since 1892, I think, and nothing's fundamentally changed with baseball. It's the same kind of basic rules and structure. I mean, they've added a lot of new stuff, and the broadcast of it has kind of evolved leaps and bounds, but at the core, baseball or football or soccer or basketball, all of those have this insane longevity about them, and it is fueled by the sport, by the competitive nature, by kind of no two games ever being the same. And I think a lot of that was at the fundamental core of League of Legends as well.
I'll come at this from a more publisher angle. As a game publisher, we've noticed that a competitive game makes a lot more sense to operate because you can get off the content treadmill to some degree. You don't have to keep coming up with new expansion packs all the time and you find the things that you can never come up with content fast enough to keep up with gamers because they burn through that content that you made in 9 months in 2 days, right? You always hear people get to level 80 in World of Warcraft in 2 days or without sleep or something like that, right? And then what do? You lose that player. Instead, if you make a competitive game that is fair, you don't sell power, people recognize that, and then the content becomes the players and the things they do with the game, right? And that has a lot more longevity as compared to something that's more really content driven. That makes a lot more sense.
Definitely an ongoing process as well, constantly developing and making sure that the tools are in place. So great question. Next one.
My question involves more about putting esports on television, and it's kind of separate for each of y'all. For example, I want to know how putting TV or esports on TV would affect team managers, how would it affect the growth of the game, and specifically Kevin Lin. I know we touched about it a little bit, but but do you think it's possible for Twitch to make a movement to actually create a channel, literally, by themselves and broadcast all forms of games through television?
Sure. I think in general for us, we started Justin TV really because we wanted distribution of content without any barriers, right? And you look at television, you're fighting to be one of the few channels that are listed. You're fighting for primetime viewership. On Twitch, you can have tens of thousands of channels live at any given moment. And it's up to the content creator to bubble up their audience. And we like that, right? I think fundamentally right now, esports is, can it translate to television? Absolutely. Does it require a lot of thinking from the developers and the leagues as to how to do it? 100%. You look at what fundamental problem with soccer in the United States, right? Advertising. You've got long periods that are running without any advertising component, and traditional television in the United States in particular has been built on having 8 of every 30 minutes run ads, and you can't have that economy. And you look at games like League, it's anywhere from a 30-minute game to a 60-minute game. It's sort of the same fundamental problem. So as a game designer, how do you think about that? How do you monetize on traditional television? Do you need to build in-game commercials? Do you need to build in-game advertising placements? And do you want that? How does it affect your game? How does it affect your players' perception of the game? I think it's a delicate balance.
Go ahead. I'm going to hijack here a bit and tell you that from experience, we did put League of Legends on TV in Taiwan. That came with a local league that we were running in Taiwan, and that came with some very distinct problems. Number one, TV is extremely low def. So you can't actually see how many creeps you've killed or how much gold they have because it's too blurry. You have this 60-inch screen, but you can't see jack, right? because it has worse resolution than your 13-inch MacBook Pro, you know, it's terrible. So the other thing is that going to TV, you're fighting for a shared screen. So your target audience are people who understand the game. Most of them are gamers. Now, they are stuck in front of their computers, their laptops, their iPads. So if you want to go TV as your primary route, you're going to fight against grandma who wants to watch like the evening drama series, right? That's a tough fight, which is why all the teens have then retreated to their rooms and they're watching YouTube and Twitch and things like that. So that doesn't really make sense as your primary strategy.
And I'd say kind of the counterpoint to that is it's, these are sensitive mics. I think it's kind of a regional preference as well. Esports is consumed primarily on television in Korea, for example, which is arguably the mecca of esports. So it's on primetime TV for League of Legends, I think 3 or 4 days a week. It's 7:30, and it'll take the number 1 or number 2 ratings depending on the matchups and whatnot. But our philosophy, at least with the LCS for North America and Europe, is, you know, if there's TV opportunities that exist that make sense, we'd be happy to explore them, but with how easy it is to kind of stream through a service like Twitch, and since a majority of our players are using that anyways to consume content, it's a great avenue for us, and we have no kind of immediate or intermediate plans to get on TV. And you know, like I always think, like, for NFL, for example, if I'm on the West Coast, I can't watch an East Coast game if it's in the afternoon because it's fighting for those airwaves. As Kevin mentioned, they can have tens of thousands of things that are available, and you get to just select what you want as your preference. So there's kind of these broken down barriers that the internet's created, and our demographic is consuming their content anyways through the internet, and I think TV is struggling to adapt to that.
Yeah, quickly on the programming side, like, could we ever do television programming? I mean, I think it's not our core competency, right? We're a platform. We're an engineering organization. We think about building the product first. That said, I mean, we do work with probably the most content creators out of anyone in the space, and could we put together some great, compelling content? Probably. Not something we think about a lot right now. Maybe we should be. I think what's great about getting something on television, whether it's just, you know, a primetime show or otherwise, it's really just telling the story about what we're up to, right? I think that will be the focal point. And I think the tournaments, the shows you're tuning into will still be digital, but the story can be told via terrestrial.
Thank you. We've got to wrap in just a moment. We'll try to take some quick questions. One more.
Okay, quick question. You spoke earlier about like the grassroots movement in esports. And one of the things with traditional sports is that as kids we grew up and we know the superstars within the game, as well as we have the access to PB leagues and things like that. But Jack spoke earlier about how the reflexes necessary to actually participate in those games don't develop until later. So I just want to hear your thoughts on how you're, just in the future, not necessarily now, but how are you going to kind of cross that threshold? Because that's one of the things that traditional sports has, is that at a young age we're introduced to those things, we can have access to actually play them.
Jack?
Well, I think you can actually, I mean, at a very young age, you can actually start playing these games and play them very well. We saw Uzi out of China, he's at 16, 15. Yeah. He was playing like some of the highest level we've ever seen. And I think actually you can really start very young and play these games on a competitive level. There's still ways for people to stay involved 24 plus as far as being a coach, mentor. So there's places in esports for a really wide range. I mean, I'm 40 and I'm involved, so clearly I'm not too washed up yet. I think there are places and opportunities in esports for everybody.
Great. Yeah, go ahead.
I brought a 15-year-old to DreamHack, Sweden, to represent Singapore a few years ago. And in lots of the PC cafes that I go to in Asia, I see 8 and 9-year-olds playing this game. They're barely like Wii high, but they're playing League of Legends, and they're really enjoying it. I think we see younger talent come up front, like we're seeing in real sports, where you have these golf phenomenons who are really young, tennis phenomenons who are really young, and we'll just see it become younger as we go along. I'm sure people just get better at it faster.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of pro players or kind of aspiring pro players like Reckles on Fnatic, who's 16, who right when he turns 17, he'll be going pro, and he's just competing in amateur activity.
Yeah, one last quick note. On that, I mean, I think over time, as with any evolution of a sport, it's all about, for us right now, I mean, some of the work we do in the background is breaking down the stigma, right? That video games are not something that's culturally acceptable. It should be. And the more that starts to break down, the more kids at a young age can aspire to play and pick their game, figure out what they like in terms of growing their esports career. I think that's where this whole industry is headed.
All right, I'm afraid we're out of time, so I'm really sorry that we weren't able to get to everyone's questions. But again, I want to thank everyone for coming out to the evolution of esports as a sport, entertainment, and international pastime. Hopefully you guys learned something, were educated, maybe found out something that you hadn't known before. Either way, we hope that you'll continue to show interest in esports, the leagues, the teams, and essentially the business behind it all. So thank you very much for giving us your time, and have a great day.